The dust-covered streets of Redemption Creek, Colorado, seemed to whisper secrets on the late summer breeze of 1878 as Eliza Lambert stepped from the stagecoach, her bruised wrist hidden beneath lace cuffs, her future as uncertain as the gathering storm clouds on the horizon. The small mining town represented her last hope, a desperate attempt to escape her father's increasingly violent outbursts since her mother's death 3 months prior. Eliza clutched her small carpet bag closer as she surveyed the main street. Redemption Creek was larger than she had imagined from her cousin's letters, with wooden buildings lining both sides of the wide dirt road. A saloon, general store, a Sayer's office, and what appeared to be a sheriff's office made up the heart of the town. Beyond these establishments, she could see smaller buildings and houses scattered outward. "Miss Lambert," a woman's voice called. Eliza turned to see a plump, middle-aged woman with kind eyes hurrying toward her. "I'm Martha Wilson. Your cousin Rose wrote that you'd be arriving today. She asked me to meet you since she couldn't get away from the boarding house." "Thank you for meeting me," Eliza said, relief washing over her. "It was a long journey." Martha's eyes softened with understanding. "Rose told me some of your circumstances. You're safe here, dear." As they walked down the dusty main street, Martha pointed out various establishments. "That's Wilson's General Store. My husband Henry runs it. The Silver Dollar Saloon there gets rowdy on Saturday nights, so best to stay clear. Sheriff Morgan's office is beside it. He keeps the peace well enough, though the miners can be a handful when they've had too much whiskey." They passed a man leading a magnificent black horse. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He nodded politely as they passed. "That's Quinn Jameson," Martha whispered after they were a few paces away. "Owns the largest ranch outside of town, keeps to himself mostly but fair in his dealings. They say he came from back east with education and money, though no one knows why he chose to settle here." Eliza caught herself looking back at the retreating figure of Quinn Jameson. Something about his confident stride and the gentle way he handled his horse stirred her curiosity. Martha led her to a 2-story wooden building with a sign reading Rose's boarding house. Inside, her cousin Rose embraced her warmly. "Eliza, thank goodness you've arrived safely. I've been worried sick since your letter." Rose's home was modest but clean, with a dining room for boarders and several rooms upstairs. Rose showed her to a small but comfortable bedroom that would be hers. "I can offer you a place to stay, but you'll need to work," Rose explained. "I need help with cooking and cleaning for the boarders. Can you manage that?" "Of course," Eliza replied, determined to make her new life work. "I'm grateful for any opportunity." Later that evening, as Eliza helped serve dinner to the boarders, a mining engineer, a schoolteacher, and an elderly widow, Rose explained more about Redemption Creek. The town's growing since they found silver in the hills, new people arriving every month. The mine owners live in those fancy houses on the hill, while the workers mostly stay in company housing near the mines. "And what about ranching?" Eliza asked, recalling the man with the black horse. "Several ranches in the valley. Jameson's the largest. He raises horses mainly, some cattle too. Employs about 15 hands. Unmarried," Rose added with a knowing smile. "I wasn't asking for that reason," Eliza protested, feeling her cheeks warm. "Of course not," Rose replied, her tone suggesting she believed otherwise. "But a respectable, wealthy rancher might be just what you need after what you've been through." "I'm not looking for anyone's protection," Eliza said firmly. "I came here to stand on my own feet." Rose's expression softened. "I know, dear, and you will. But there's no shame in finding happiness with someone who respects you." That night, lying in her new bed, Eliza traced her fingers over the fading bruise on her wrist, a parting gift from her father. She had fled Philadelphia with nothing but a small inheritance from her mother, hidden away where her father couldn't drink it away. The bruises would heal, but the memory of her father's rage remained vivid. After her mother died, his drinking had worsened, and with it, his temper. The final night when he'd come at her with his belt, she'd known she had to leave or risk worse. Eliza closed her eyes, willing the memories away. Redemption Creek would be her fresh start. Here, she would become strong and independent, never again at the mercy of a man's temper. Morning brought sunshine and work. Eliza fell into the routine of the boarding house quickly, rising early to help prepare breakfast, cleaning rooms, and assisting Rose with whatever needed doing. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in months, she felt useful. A week after her arrival, Rose sent her to Wilson's general store with a list of supplies. The store was crowded with miners and townspeople. As she waited her turn, the bell above the door jingled, and Quinn Jameson stepped inside. He removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair and a strong-jawed face that was handsome without being pretty. He nodded politely to those he knew, his eyes briefly meeting Eliza's before she looked away. When her turn came, Henry Wilson greeted her warmly. "Miss Lambert. How are you settling in at Rose's?" "Very well, thank you," she replied, handing him the list. As Henry gathered the items, Eliza became aware of Quinn Jameson standing nearby, seemingly interested in a display of work gloves but occasionally glancing her way. When their eyes met again, he tipped his head slightly in acknowledgement. "Miss," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I believe we haven't been formally introduced. Quinn Jameson." "Eliza Lambert," she replied, offering a small, cautious smile. "I'm Rose Wilson's cousin." "From back east, I understand. Philadelphia, was it?" Eliza stiffened. "Yes, how did you know?" "Small town," he said with an apologetic smile. "News travels fast, especially when it's about a new arrival." Henry returned with her packages. "That'll be $2.45, Miss Lambert." Eliza reached into her small purse, counting out the money carefully. As she turned to leave, struggling with the packages, Quinn stepped forward. "Allow me to carry those for you, Miss Lambert." "That's not necessary, Mr. Jameson," she said quickly. "I insist," he replied, already taking the largest parcel. "I'm headed in that direction anyway." Unable to refuse without seeming rude, Eliza acquiesced. They walked in silence for a moment before Quinn spoke. "I hope you're finding Redemption Creek to your liking." "It's different from Philadelphia," she admitted, "but I appreciate the fresh air and open spaces." "It grows on you," he said. "I came from Boston originally, couldn't imagine staying here long. That was 8 years ago." Eliza studied him from the corner of her eye. "What made you stay?" Quinn's expression turned thoughtful. "Freedom, I suppose, room to breathe, to build something that's entirely your own." They reached the boarding house steps. Quinn placed her packages down carefully. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Jameson." "Quinn, please," he said. "And it was my pleasure, Miss Lambert." "Eliza," she responded, surprising herself. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face. "Eliza, welcome to Redemption Creek." As he walked away, Eliza found herself watching his retreating figure longer than was proper. There was something about Quinn Jameson that intrigued her, a quiet strength that didn't demand attention but commanded respect nonetheless. Inside, Rose was waiting with a knowing grin. "I saw you walking with Quinn Jameson." Eliza busied herself with unpacking the supplies. "He was merely being polite. Quinn Jameson doesn't carry packages for just anyone," Rose insisted. "He's particular about who he associates with." "You're reading too much into a simple courtesy," Eliza said, though a small part of her wondered if Rose might be right. That evening, there was a commotion in the dining room. Eliza entered to find her father, Gerald Lambert, standing in the doorway, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. "There you are, girl," he slurred, pointing an accusing finger at her. "Thought you could run away from your responsibilities." Eliza froze, terror coursing through her veins. "Father, what are you doing here?" "Taking you home where you belong," he growled, lurching forward. "Your mother's barely cold in her grave, and you abandon your duties to your family." Rose stepped between them. "Mr. Lambert, your daughter is a grown woman. She's welcome here and has employment." Gerald's face darkened. "Stay out of this. She's my daughter and she's coming home." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Eliza said, finding her voice despite her fear. "I'm 22 years old. I make my own decisions now." Gerald lunged forward, grabbing Eliza's arm roughly. "You ungrateful sir," came a stern voice from the doorway. "I suggest you release the lady." Quinn Jameson stood in the entrance, his posture tense but controlled. He'd clearly come for his evening meal, as he did occasionally according to Rose, and had walked into the middle of the confrontation. Gerald's grip tightened on Eliza's arm. "This is family business. Get out." Quinn moved forward with deliberate steps. "In Redemption Creek, we don't manhandle women, family or otherwise. She's my daughter." "That doesn't give you the right to hurt her," Quinn said, his voice dangerously quiet. Gerald raised his free hand to strike Eliza. In a flash, Quinn was there, grabbing Gerald's wrist mid-air with iron strength. "Never again," Quinn said, his eyes hard as flint. "You will never raise a hand to her again." The room fell silent. The boarders watched in stunned silence as Quinn maintained his grip on Gerald's wrist, forcing the older man to release Eliza. "This isn't your concern," Gerald snarled, trying unsuccessfully to free himself. "I'm making it my concern," Quinn replied evenly. "Now you have two choices. You can leave peacefully, or I can have Sheriff Morgan escort you to the town limits." For a moment, it seemed Gerald might fight, but something in Quinn's steady gaze made him reconsider. He yanked his arm free and backed toward the door. "This isn't over," he threatened, his gaze fixed on Eliza. "You belong at home." "This is my home now," Eliza replied, her voice trembling but determined. "Goodbye, Father." After Gerald stormed out, Rose hurried to check on Eliza. "Are you all right, dear? How did he find you?" "I'm fine," Eliza assured her, though her heart was racing. "He must have seen the address on the letter I sent to collect my remaining things." Quinn watched the exchange quietly before asking, "Has he hurt you before?" Eliza hesitated, then nodded slightly. "After my mother died, he changed, started drinking more. His temper became unpredictable." Quinn's jaw tightened. "He won't bother you again. I'll speak to Sheriff Morgan, make sure he keeps an eye out for him." "Thank you," Eliza said, meeting his gaze directly, "but I don't want to be a burden on anyone." "It's no burden to ensure a lady's safety," Quinn replied. "Besides, in Redemption Creek, we look out for our own. The words warmed her unexpectedly. For so long she had felt alone, adrift without her mother's love to anchor her. The idea of belonging somewhere, to a community that would protect her, was overwhelmingly appealing. That night, Eliza found it difficult to sleep. The confrontation with her father had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. But even more unsettling was the memory of Quinn Jameson's intervention, the way he had appeared just when she needed help most, the strength in his hand as he caught her father's wrist, the quiet intensity of his words. Never again. She had fled Philadelphia to escape being under a man's control, yet here she was, feeling grateful for another man's protection. The contradiction troubled her. She didn't want to trade one form of dependency for another, no matter how different the men might be. The next morning, a bouquet of wildflowers arrived for her with a note. "Miss Lambert, I hope you're recovering from yesterday's unpleasantness. Should you ever feel unsafe, please don't hesitate to seek assistance. Respectfully, Q. Jameson." The gesture was thoughtful without being presumptuous. Eliza found herself touched by his concern even as she reminded herself to maintain her independence. Several days passed without incident. Eliza threw herself into her work at the boarding house, grateful for the routine and the sense of purpose it provided. She began to learn the rhythms of Redemption Creek, which days the miners came to town, when the supply wagons arrived, how the community gathered for church on Sundays regardless of whether they believed in the preacher's words. On Sunday afternoon, after church services, Eliza was walking back to the boarding house when Quinn approached on horseback. "Good afternoon, Miss Lambert," he called, tipping his hat. "Mr. Jameson," she acknowledged with a nod. He dismounted smoothly, leading his horse beside her. "I trust your father has left town." "Yes, Sheriff Morgan confirmed he took the eastbound stage yesterday." Quinn nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Good, though I suspect he may return once his temper and funds are exhausted." "I've considered that possibility," Eliza admitted. "But I won't live in fear of it." They walked in companionable silence for a moment before Quinn spoke again. "I was wondering if you might accompany me on a ride next Saturday. The aspen trees are beginning to turn, and there's a view from Willow Ridge that's particularly beautiful this time of year." The invitation surprised her. I'm not sure that would be appropriate, Mr. Jameson. Quinn, please, he reminded her. And we could invite Rose to join us if propriety is your concern, though I assure you my intentions are honorable. Eliza considered his offer. A part of her wanted to accept, to explore the countryside beyond the town limits and enjoy his company. But another part remained cautious, protective of her newfound independence. I'll think about it, she finally said. Quinn seemed satisfied with her response. That's all I ask. Good day, Eliza. As he mounted his horse and rode away, Eliza found herself watching him, appreciating the easy way he sat in the saddle and the respectful manner in which he had accepted her hesitancy. That evening, Rose was full of questions. Quinn Jameson invited you riding, and you said you'd think about it. Eliza, the man owns half the valley and has never shown interest in any woman in town. What is there to think about? I came here to stand on my own, not to seek another man's protection, Eliza explained. Setting the dinner table, Rose's expression softened. Quinn isn't your father, Eliza. Not all men are the same. I know that, Eliza sighed, but I need to be sure of myself first before I can consider anyone else. Just don't wait too long, Rose cautioned. Good men like Quinn Jameson don't come along every day. The next morning, as Eliza was hanging laundry in the yard behind the boarding house, she heard a commotion from the main street. Curious, she moved to the front of the building to see a group of riders entering town. They were a rough-looking bunch, trail-worn and armed. Who are they? She asked Mrs. Pemberley, the elderly widow who boarded with them. Trouble, the older woman replied grimly. That's Victor Harlow and his men. They own the Golden Star mine north of town. Harlow's been trying to buy out the smaller mining operations, sometimes with threats rather than fair offers. Eliza watched as the men dismounted outside the Silver Dollar Saloon. Victor Harlow was easily identifiable, a tall man with a shock of gray hair and cold eyes. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. Later that day, Quinn Jameson came to the boarding house, his expression serious. He asked to speak with Eliza privately. Rose discreetly left them alone in the small parlor. I wanted to warn you, Quinn said without preamble. Victor Harlow's in town. I saw him arrive this morning, Eliza replied. What concern is that of mine? Quinn hesitated. Harlow has a reputation for using whatever leverage he can find against people who stand in his way. Your father's appearance in town has become common knowledge, as has my intervention. Understanding dawned. You think he might use that against you somehow? I've refused to sell him water rights to the creek that runs through my property, Quinn explained. He needs that water for his mining operations. I'm concerned he might try to pressure you as a way to get to me. Eliza stiffened. I'm not some pawn to be used in men's games, Mr. Jameson. I never suggested you were, Quinn replied calmly. I'm merely warning you to be careful. Harlow isn't above using underhanded tactics. Why are you opposing him? Eliza asked. If he needs the water for his business, because he doesn't just use the water, Quinn interrupted, his voice hardening. His mining methods pollute it. The waste kills everything downstream: fish, wildlife, even cattle that drink from it. I've seen what happened on the North Fork of the river where his other operations are. Eliza studied him, seeing the passion behind his words. You care about the land. I do, he admitted. Maybe it's because I wasn't born to it, but I value what we have here. Harlow sees only profit, not the cost to everything and everyone else. His sincerity touched her. Here was a man fighting not just for his own interests, but for something larger than himself. It made her previous concerns about his motives seem petty. Thank you for the warning, she said softly. I'll be careful, Quinn nodded, relief crossing his features. About Saturday, I would be pleased to accompany you, Eliza interrupted, having made her decision. Though perhaps we should invite Rose, as you suggested. Quinn's smile was warm. Of course, I'll make the arrangements. After he left, Eliza found herself contemplating how quickly her life had changed since arriving in Redemption Creek. She had come seeking independence, and instead found herself drawn into conflicts and connections she hadn't anticipated. Yet for all the complications, she felt more alive here than she had in Philadelphia for years. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, with the kind of blue sky that seemed unique to Colorado. Quinn arrived with 3 horses, his own black stallion, a gentle mare for Eliza, and a steady gelding for Rose. He had packed a picnic lunch and brought along a spare jacket in case the mountain air turned cool. "I haven't been riding in years," Eliza admitted as she approached the mare cautiously. "Marigold is gentle as a lamb," Quinn assured her, helping her mount. His hands on her waist were strong but respectful as he lifted her into the saddle. They rode out of town, Quinn leading the way with Eliza in the middle and Rose bringing up the rear. Once past the outskirts, the true beauty of the landscape revealed itself. Rolling hills gave way to steeper terrain, with pine forests climbing the slopes and aspen groves glowing gold and orange in the autumn light. "It's breathtaking," Eliza said, taking in the panorama. Quinn nodded, pleased by her appreciation. "Wait until we reach the ridge." They rode for an hour, Quinn pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the area. Eliza found herself relaxing in his company, enjoying his knowledge and the easy way he explained things without condescension. When they reached Willow Ridge, Quinn helped them dismount and led them to a clearing that overlooked the valley. Below, Redemption Creek wound like a silver ribbon through the landscape, with the town a collection of tiny buildings in the distance. "This is magnificent," Eliza breathed, turning slowly to take in the 360-degree view. "Worth the ride?" Quinn asked, standing close enough that she could feel his presence without being crowded. "Absolutely," she replied, meeting his gaze. They spread the picnic blanket in a sheltered spot beneath a stand of aspen trees, their golden leaves creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns. Quinn had brought fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, and apple pie from the hotel restaurant. "You've gone to a lot of trouble," Eliza observed as he laid out the feast. "Good company deserves good food," he replied with a smile. As they ate, Rose kept the conversation flowing with stories about the town's early days. Eliza noticed how Quinn listened attentively, showing genuine interest in Rose's reminiscences. It was a quality she appreciated, that he valued the perspectives of others regardless of their station. After they'd eaten, Rose announced that she needed a short nap to digest her meal and settled herself under a tree a discreet distance away. Her intentions transparent. Left alone with Quinn, Eliza felt a flutter of nervousness. He seemed to sense her discomfort and kept a respectful distance as they stood at the edge of the ridge, looking out over the valley. "How did you come to be in Redemption Creek?" Eliza asked, genuinely curious about his background. Quinn's expression turned reflective. "I was supposed to join my father's banking business in Boston. It was all arranged, my education, my position, even which partner's daughter I should marry." His mouth twisted in a wry smile. "But it wasn't the life I wanted. We argued and I left. Headed west with no real plan except to find something that felt right. And you found it here," he nodded, gesturing to the landscape. "I worked as a ranch hand for 2 years learning the business. When old man Peterson wanted to sell his place, I wrote to my mother. She sent me my inheritance from my grandfather, enough for a down payment. I've been building it up ever since." "Do you ever regret leaving Boston?" Eliza asked. "No," Quinn answered without hesitation. "Though I regret the rift with my father. He died 3 years ago. We never reconciled." The pain in his voice was evident, and Eliza found herself touching his arm in sympathy. "I'm sorry." Quinn covered her hand with his own briefly. "Thank you. What about you? What brought you to Redemption Creek besides escaping your father?" Eliza sighed, considering how much to reveal. "After my mother died, the house became unbearable. Father had always had a temper, but he'd respected my mother enough to control it around her. Without her, she trailed off, the memories still raw. He turned his anger on you," Quinn finished softly. She nodded, unconsciously rubbing her wrist where the bruises had finally faded. "I stayed too long, telling myself it was my duty, that he was grieving, making excuses." Her voice hardened. "The night I left, he'd lost heavily at cards. Came home in a rage, blamed me for not having dinner ready, though I'd kept it warming for hours. When he raised his belt, I knew I had to leave, or you might not survive the next time," Quinn supplied, his expression grim. Yes, Eliza whispered. I packed what I could carry, took the money Mother had left me in her jewelry box, and slipped out while he slept off the whiskey. I wrote to Rose that night, posting the letter at the station before boarding the first train west. Quinn's hand found hers, his grip warm and reassuring. You were brave to leave. Many wouldn't have had the courage, or the means, Eliza acknowledged. I was fortunate that my mother provided for me in her own way. They stood in companionable silence, watching an eagle soar on the thermals above the valley. Quinn's hand remained holding hers, the contact comforting rather than presumptuous. Eliza, Quinn said finally, turning to face her. I want you to know that I admire your independence. I'm not offering protection because I think you need it, but because I would like to be part of your life. If you'll permit it. His directness surprised and pleased her. There was no artifice in his words, no attempt to diminish her agency while claiming to respect it. I think I would like that, she replied softly, though I'm still finding my footing here. We have time, Quinn said, his smile warming his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. The moment was interrupted by Rose calling to them. We should start back if we want to reach town before sunset. The ride back was filled with comfortable conversation and laughter. Eliza found herself watching Quinn, appreciating his easy confidence and the gentle way he handled his horse. He was nothing like her father or the society men she had known in Philadelphia. There was a straightforwardness to him that she found refreshing. As they neared town, however, Quinn's demeanor changed. He became alert, his gaze scanning the road ahead with sudden intensity. What is it? Eliza asked, noticing the shift. Probably nothing, he replied, though his posture remained vigilant. But Harlow's men have been seen watching the trails lately. They reached the outskirts of town without incident, but as they passed the Silver Dollar Saloon, Victor Harlow himself stepped out, flanked by two rough-looking men. Well, well, Harlow called, his voice carrying across the street. If it isn't Jameson and his ladies, enjoy your picnic. Quinn's expression remained neutral. Afternoon, Harlow. Interesting company you're keeping these days, Harlow continued, his gaze lingering on Eliza in a way that made her skin crawl. Miss Lambert, isn't it? I heard about your father's visit, quite the family reunion from what I understand. Eliza stiffened in the saddle but kept her voice steady. Mr. Harlow, I don't believe we've been introduced. Victor Harlow, at your service, he replied with a mocking bow. Owner of the Golden Star Mine, and soon, I hope, much more. We should be getting back, Rose interjected, clearly uncomfortable with the encounter. Of course, Harlow smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. I wouldn't want to keep ladies out after proper hours, that would be inappropriate. The implication was clear and Quinn's jaw tightened. Good day, Harlow. As they continued down the street, Eliza could feel Harlow's eyes following them. Once they were out of earshot, she turned to Quinn. He was threatening you through me, wasn't he? Quinn nodded grimly. Testing the waters, seeing how I'd react to a veiled insult to your reputation. What does he hope to gain? Rose asked, bewildered. Leverage, Quinn replied. He wants my water rights. If he can't buy them, he'll look for other ways to get what he wants. And he thinks threatening me will work? Eliza asked, indignant. Quinn's expression softened as he looked at her. He doesn't know you very well, does he? The comment made Eliza smile despite her anger. No, he certainly doesn't. They reached the boarding house where Quinn helped both women dismount. He lingered after Rose went inside, clearly wanting a private word with Eliza. I'm sorry about Harlow, he said quietly. I didn't anticipate running into him. It's not your fault, Eliza assured him. Though I don't appreciate being used as a pawn in his game. Quinn's expression turned serious. Harlow is dangerous, Eliza, not just to me or my ranch, but to the whole valley. His mining operations have poisoned 2 other watersheds if he gets control of Redemption Creek. The town would suffer, Eliza finished, understanding the larger implications. Yes, Quinn confirmed. That's why I've been organizing the other ranchers and smaller mine owners to oppose him. There's a town meeting next week to discuss new ordinances that would restrict the kind of mining practices Harlow employs. Eliza considered this information. And that's why he's targeting you specifically, because you're leading the opposition, partly, Quinn admitted. Though I think he'd want my water rights regardless. My ranch controls the headwaters of the creek. Their conversation was interrupted by a rider approaching at speed. It was Tom Riley, one of Quinn's ranch hands, his expression urgent. "Boss, there's trouble at the ranch." Fire in the north pasture spreading fast toward the horse corrals. Quinn's face darkened. "Harlow," he muttered, then turned to Eliza. "I have to go." "Of course," she said quickly. "Be careful." He hesitated for just a moment, then leaned down and pressed a swift, gentle kiss to her cheek. "I'll come by tomorrow if I can." Then he was gone, mounting his horse in one fluid motion and galloping away with Tom. Eliza touched her cheek where his lips had brushed her skin, a mixture of concern and something warmer flooding through her. She watched until he disappeared from sight, then went inside, her mind filled with thoughts of Quinn Jameson and the complications he had brought into her life. The next morning brought news that the fire at Jameson Ranch had been contained before causing significant damage, though several acres of grazing land had been lost. There was no proof that Harlow was behind it, but the timing seemed too convenient to be coincidental. Quinn didn't come to town as promised, but he sent a note explaining that he needed to stay at the ranch to organize repairs and increased security. His words were practical, but there was a personal postscript that made Eliza smile. "I find myself thinking of you often, especially when looking toward town from the ridge where we stood together." 3 days later, as Eliza was returning from delivering clean linens to the hotel, she noticed a group of men gathered outside the sheriff's office. Drawing closer, she recognized Quinn among them, his expression grave as he spoke with Sheriff Morgan and several other men she knew to be ranchers from the surrounding area. When Quinn saw her, he excused himself and approached. "Eliza, I was hoping to see you. Is everything all right?" She asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. "Not exactly," he admitted. "One of the smaller ranchers, Dave Miller, was beaten last night on his way home from town. He's been vocal about opposing Harlow's attempts to dam the creek." Eliza's eyes widened. "Is he badly hurt?" "Broken arm, bruised ribs. He'll recover, but it's a clear message." Quinn ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Harlow's escalating, and Sheriff Morgan says there's not enough evidence to arrest anyone." "What will you do?" Eliza asked, concerned for his safety as much as for the situation. "We're organizing around-the-clock watch on key properties, including my ranch and the other water access points." He hesitated, then added, "I'm worried about you, Eliza. Harlow's made it clear he knows there's something between us." "Is there?" she asked quietly, meeting his gaze directly. "Something between us," Quinn's expression softened. "I hope so. I certainly feel something I haven't felt before." The honesty of his answer warmed her. "I do too," she admitted, "though it's complicated." "Life generally is," Quinn replied with a small smile. "Look, the town meeting is tomorrow night. Will you come? I'd feel better knowing where you are, and your voice could be valuable. You've seen what unchecked power can do." Eliza considered his request. "I'll be there, not just for you, but because it seems important for the town." Relief crossed his features. "Thank you. I should get back to the meeting. We're coordinating the watch schedules." "Be careful, Quinn," she said, touching his arm briefly. "Always," he promised, covering her hand with his own for a moment before rejoining the men. The town meeting was held in the church, the only building in Redemption Creek large enough to accommodate most of the population. Eliza and Rose arrived early, finding seats near the front where they could see and hear clearly. As the church filled, Eliza noticed the divisions among the townspeople, mine workers on one side, ranchers and merchants on the other, with a nervous group of smaller mine owners caught in the middle. Quinn entered with several other ranchers, nodding to Eliza as he took a seat across the aisle. Mayor Simmons called the meeting to order, his portly frame sweating despite the cool evening. "Folks, we're here to discuss proposed ordinances regarding mining practices and water usage in Redemption Creek and the surrounding watershed," he began, his voice quavering slightly. "Mr. Jameson has requested time to present his concerns, and Mr. Harlow will respond. I ask that everyone remain civil." Quinn rose and walked to the front of the church. He spoke clearly and confidently about the dangers of the mining methods Harlow employed, using examples from other communities where similar practices had resulted in contaminated water, dying livestock, and health problems for residents. "We're not opposed to mining," Quinn emphasized. "Many of us have investments in the smaller, more responsible operations. What we're opposed to is methods that sacrifice the long-term health of our community for short-term profit." He outlined proposed ordinances that would restrict certain practices and require mining companies to prevent contamination of the watershed. The ranchers and townspeople listened attentively, many nodding in agreement. When Quinn finished, Victor Harlow took the floor. He was smoothly persuasive, dismissing concerns as exaggerated and suggesting that the proposed ordinances would cost jobs and reduce the town's prosperity. "Mr. Jameson speaks eloquently about risks, but what about the risk of economic stagnation?" Harlow asked, his voice silky. "My operations employ over 100 men. Those men support families, patronize businesses in town. If these restrictive ordinances pass, I may be forced to reconsider my investments in Redemption Creek." The threat hung in the air. Several of the mine workers shifted uncomfortably, fear for their livelihoods evident in their expressions. Mayor Simmons called for questions from the townspeople. Various concerns were raised, some supporting Quinn's position, others worried about Harlow's implied threat to jobs. Eliza found herself standing, surprising even herself. "May I speak, Mayor Simmons?" The mayor nodded, and all eyes turned to her. Quinn looked surprised but encouraging. "I'm new to Redemption Creek," Eliza began, her voice steadier than she felt, "but I recognize the pattern, Mr. Harlow is employing because I've seen it before. In Philadelphia, my father worked for a factory owner who used the same tactics, threatening livelihoods to avoid responsibility for the harm his business caused." She described how the factory had polluted the Schuylkill River, how workers had developed mysterious illnesses, how the owner had silenced opposition with promises and threats. "They said the regulations would cost jobs too," Eliza continued. "And when they finally came, some jobs were indeed lost, but the river began to recover and new businesses that depended on clean water moved in. Different jobs, perhaps, but jobs nonetheless." She looked directly at Harlow. "Short-term thinking benefits only those who can take their profits and leave when the damage is done. The rest of us have to live with the consequences." A murmur ran through the crowd as she sat down, her heart pounding. Rose squeezed her hand in support. The debate continued for another hour, growing increasingly heated. Finally, the mayor called for a vote on whether to proceed with drafting the ordinances. By a narrow margin, the town voted yes, though it was clear the community remained divided. As the meeting broke up, Quinn made his way to Eliza's side. "That was brave," he said quietly, "and effective. I think you swayed some of the undecided." "I hope so," she replied, suddenly exhausted by the emotional effort of speaking publicly. Quinn's expression turned concerned. Harlow didn't look pleased. I don't think he expected opposition from someone he hadn't accounted for. "I'm not afraid of him," Eliza said, though she felt a flutter of unease at the cold look Harlow had given her as he left. "Maybe you should be," Quinn replied grimly. "At least until we get these ordinances passed. Let me walk you and Rose home." Outside, the night air was cool and crisp. Stars blazed overhead in a way they never had in Philadelphia, where coal smoke often obscured the sky. Quinn offered Eliza his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. "You surprise me, Eliza Lambert," Quinn said as they walked, "in the best possible way." "I surprise myself sometimes," she admitted with a small laugh. "I never would have spoken up like that in Philadelphia." "Maybe you just needed the right cause," he suggested, "or the right place to find your voice." The idea resonated with her. Perhaps Redemption Creek was offering her more than just safety from her father. Perhaps it was offering her a chance to become the person she was meant to be. They reached the boarding house, where Rose tactfully excused herself to go inside, leaving Quinn and Eliza alone on the porch. "Thank you for your support tonight," Quinn said, taking her hands in his. "It meant a great deal." "I spoke the truth as I see it," Eliza replied, That's all." Quinn's gaze was warm in the lamplight spilling from the window. "May I call on you properly? Perhaps Sunday after church," Eliza smiled, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I'd like that." Quinn hesitated, then leaned forward slowly, giving her ample time to retreat if she wished. When she didn't move away, he pressed a gentle kiss to her lips, brief but full of promise. "Good night, Eliza," he murmured, stepping back. "Good night, Quinn," she replied, her voice slightly breathless. As she watched him walk away, Eliza touched her lips, marveling at how different his touch was from any she had known before. There was respect in it, and a tenderness that asked rather than demanded. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that perhaps there could be a future here in Redemption Creek, not just escape from her past, but something new and hopeful. Inside, Rose was waiting with barely contained excitement. "Well, is he calling on you officially now?" Eliza couldn't help but smile. "Sunday after church," Rose clapped her hands in delight. "I knew it, the way he looks at you, Eliza, like you're the sunrise after a long night." "You're being dramatic," Eliza protested, though the description pleased her. "I'm being observant," Rose countered. "That man is smitten, and unless I'm very much mistaken, so are you." Eliza didn't deny it, which was answer enough for Rose. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The town council began drafting the proposed ordinances, with Quinn deeply involved in the process. Harlow and his men maintained a visible presence in town, creating an undercurrent of tension that everyone felt. Quinn visited briefly each day, sometimes just for a few minutes between meetings. His attention never felt smothering or possessive. Instead, he seemed to genuinely enjoy her company and respect her opinions. On Saturday morning, Eliza was alone in the boarding house kitchen, preparing bread dough for the next day's meals, when there was a knock at the back door. Wiping her hands on her apron, she opened it to find a young boy she recognized as one of the stable hands from the livery. "Miss Lambert," he asked, looking nervous. "Mr. Jameson asked me to give you this." He thrust a folded note into her hand. "Thank you," Eliza said, offering him a cookie from the jar on the counter. "Wait a moment in case there's a reply." The note was brief. "Eliza, please meet me at the old Peterson cabin at noon. There's something important I need to discuss with you privately. Quinn." The request seemed odd. Why would Quinn want to meet somewhere so isolated rather than coming to the boarding house as usual? Still, perhaps he had his reasons. The Peterson cabin was about a mile outside of town, on the road toward Quinn's ranch. It had been abandoned for years, according to Rose, since old man Peterson sold his land to Quinn. "Is there a reply, miss?" the boy asked, having devoured the cookie. "Tell Mr. Jameson I'll be there," Eliza decided, still puzzled but trusting that Quinn had good reason for the unusual request. After the boy left, Eliza finished her baking and then changed into a walking dress and sturdy boots. She left a note for Rose explaining where she had gone and set out toward the Peterson cabin. The day was pleasant, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine from the surrounding hills. Eliza enjoyed the walk, though a nagging sense of unease grew as she approached the weathered cabin that stood in a small clearing off the main road. There was no sign of Quinn or his horse. The cabin door was ajar, creaking slightly in the breeze. Something felt wrong. "Quinn." Eliza called, approaching cautiously. A figure stepped from behind the cabin, not Quinn, but one of Harlow's men, a burly miner with a scar running down one cheek. "Miss Lambert," he said, his tone mocking. "So glad you could join us." Eliza backed away, realizing too late that she had walked into a trap. "Us." Victor Harlow emerged from the cabin, his smile cold. "Indeed, though I'm afraid Mr. Jameson won't be joining the party. He's quite unaware of our little meeting." Fear coursed through Eliza, but she forced herself to remain outwardly calm. "What do you want, Mr. Harlow?" "Just a conversation," Harlow replied, circling her slowly. "About your unfortunate influence on the town council and Mr. Jameson in particular." "I have no influence," Eliza protested. "I merely spoke my mind," Harlow laughed without humor, "and swayed enough opinions to cause me considerable inconvenience. Now I'm a reasonable man. I'm prepared to offer you a generous sum to leave Redemption Creek immediately." Eliza's eyes widened. You want to pay me to leave?" $500, Harlow specified, more than enough for a fresh start somewhere else, somewhere far from here. The amount was substantial, more than Eliza could earn in a year at the boarding house, but the implication infuriated her. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Harlow," she said firmly. "And neither is this town." Harlow's expression hardened. "Everyone has a price, Miss Lambert. If money doesn't persuade you, perhaps other considerations will." He nodded to his henchman, who took a threatening step forward. "You wouldn't dare harm me," Eliza said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. The sheriff would what?" Harlow interrupted. "Accidents happen all the time on the frontier. A young woman walking alone, perhaps falling from a ridge or getting lost in the woods." Real fear gripped Eliza now. She glanced around, looking for an escape route, but the henchman was blocking the path back to town. "Now, let's reconsider my generous offer," Harlow continued, reaching into his jacket. $500 and you leave on tomorrow's stage. No one gets hurt and you can start fresh somewhere without the complications of Redemption Creek. Before Eliza could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats reached them. Harlow cursed under his breath, motioning to his man to grab Eliza. She dodged, only to be caught by Harlow himself, his grip painfully tight on her arm. Quinn Jameson burst into the clearing, his expression thunderous as he took in the scene. Behind him rode Tom Riley and another ranch hand. "Let her go, Harlow," Quinn demanded, his voice dangerously quiet as he dismounted, hand hovering near his holstered pistol. "Jameson," Harlow acknowledged, keeping his hold on Eliza. "This is a private conversation. I suggest you leave." "Not without Miss Lambert," Quinn replied, his gaze shifting to Eliza. "Are you hurt?" "No," she managed, though Harlow's grip was bruising her arm. Quinn's eyes hardened as he noticed. "Last chance, Harlow. Let her go or this gets ugly." The henchman moved toward Quinn, but Tom and the other ranch hand quickly positioned themselves to intercept him, making it clear he was outnumbered. Harlow, recognizing his disadvantage, released Eliza with a show of casual indifference. "We were merely discussing business, weren't we, Miss Lambert? If by business you mean threatening me to leave town, then yes," Eliza replied, moving to Quinn's side. Quinn's expression darkened further. "You crossed a line, Harlow." "Business often involves negotiation," Harlow said smoothly. "I made an offer. Miss Lambert was considering it." "I declined," Eliza corrected firmly. Quinn placed a protective arm around her shoulders. "We're leaving, but this isn't over, Harlow. Threatening a woman won't be overlooked, not in this town." "Threats," Harlow laughed. "You misunderstand, Jameson. I offered Miss Lambert an opportunity. $500 is generous compensation for the inconvenience of relocating." "Save it for the sheriff," Quinn replied coldly. He helped Eliza onto his horse, then mounted behind her. To his men he called, "Make sure, Mr." Harlow and his associate returned to town without any detours. As they rode away, Eliza leaned back against Quinn's solid presence, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. She had been lured into a trap, threatened, and might have been seriously harmed if Quinn hadn't arrived when he did. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice shaky despite her efforts to control it. "I didn't send any note," Quinn replied, his arm tightening protectively around her waist as he guided the horse. "But when I stopped by the boarding house and Rose mentioned where you'd gone, I knew something was wrong. The Peterson cabin has been abandoned for years." "I should have been more cautious," Eliza admitted. "It seemed odd, but I trusted that you had a reason." "Harlow's more dangerous than I realized if he's willing to go this far," Quinn said grimly. "Using my name to lure you into a trap crosses every line." They rode directly to the sheriff's office, where Eliza gave a full account of what had happened. Sheriff Morgan listened gravely, making notes and asking occasional questions. "It's your word against his, Miss Lambert," the sheriff said finally, "and Harlow will claim it was just a business proposition, not a threat. He implied that I might have an accident if I didn't accept his offer," Eliza insisted. Sheriff Morgan sighed. "Implying isn't the same as doing in the eyes of the law. I can talk to him, warn him to stay away from you, but without more evidence of actual wrongdoing." Quinn's frustration was evident. So he gets away with it. What about the forged note? The boy who delivered it says he got it from a man he didn't recognize, the sheriff explained. Paid him a quarter to deliver it to Miss Lambert. Without identifying the man, there's no direct connection to Harlow. Eliza felt a wave of helplessness. So there's nothing to be done, Sheriff Morgan's expression softened. I didn't say that, Miss Lambert. I'll keep a closer eye on Harlow and his men. And I'd advise you not to go anywhere alone for a while. After leaving the sheriff's office, Quinn insisted on escorting Eliza back to the boarding house. I don't like this, Eliza. Harlow's not the type to give up easily. What will you do? She asked, aware that the conflict had escalated beyond water rights and mining ordinances. Continue pushing for the ordinances, Quinn replied firmly. We can't let him intimidate us into backing down, but I'm also going to increase security at the ranch and make sure you're protected. I don't want to be the cause of more trouble, Eliza said, distressed by the thought of putting Quinn in greater danger. Quinn stopped, turning to face her directly. You're not the cause, Eliza. Harlow is, and I would face far worse to keep you safe. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Quinn, I care about you, he said simply, more than I expected to, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. Eliza's heart raced at his confession. I care about you too, that's why I'm worried. Quinn's hand came up to cup her cheek gently. We'll face this together. That's what people do when they care about each other. Together, the word resonated within her. For so long she had been alone in her struggles, first with her mother's illness, then with her father's abuse. The idea of facing challenges with someone beside her, someone who respected her strength while offering his own, was powerfully appealing. Together, she agreed softly. Quinn's smile was warm as he bent to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. I should go. There's a meeting of the ranchers tonight to discuss next steps with the ordinances, but I'll see you tomorrow after church, as promised. Be careful, Eliza urged, reluctant to see him go but understanding the importance of his work. Always, Quinn assured her, his eyes lingering on her face for a moment before he turned to leave. Inside the boarding house, Rose was waiting anxiously. Eliza, thank goodness you're safe. When Mr. Jameson came looking for you, so concerned about that note you mentioned. It was a trick, Eliza explained, sinking into a chair as reaction set in. Harlow tried to bribe me to leave town. When I refused, he threatened me. Rose's face paled. That horrible man, did Quinn find you in time? Yes, thankfully, Eliza confirmed, relating the events at the cabin and the subsequent visit to the sheriff. You can't stay here alone, Rose declared. Not with Harlow and his men in town. The boarding house isn't secure enough. I'm not leaving, Eliza said firmly. That's exactly what Harlow wants. I'm not suggesting you leave town, Rose clarified, but perhaps you should stay somewhere safer until this is resolved. The Wilsons might take you in, or no, Eliza interrupted. I won't be driven from my home, Rose, not again. Rose's expression softened in understanding. Of course, then we'll find another solution. Perhaps one of Quinn's men could keep watch nearby. The idea had merit, and when Quinn came to call after church the next day, Eliza suggested it. He agreed immediately, arranging for his men to take turns watching the boarding house discreetly. The next week passed in a state of tense vigilance. The town council continued work on the mining ordinances, with Quinn deeply involved in the process. Harlow maintained a visible presence in town but kept his distance from Eliza, perhaps wary after the confrontation at the cabin. Despite the tension, Eliza and Quinn's relationship deepened. He called on her properly, sometimes taking her for walks through town under Rose's watchful eye, other times simply sitting in the boarding house parlor, talking about their lives and hopes. Eliza learned that Quinn had a younger sister in Boston who wrote to him regularly, that he enjoyed poetry but would never admit it to his ranch hands, and that he had dreams of breeding a line of horses specifically suited to the Colorado climate. In turn, she shared her love of music. She had played piano before leaving Philadelphia, her enjoyment of teaching, which she had done briefly as a young woman, and her hopes of perhaps opening a small school in Redemption Creek one day. You'd make an excellent teacher, Quinn told her. The town has enough children now to support a proper school, not just the informal lessons Mrs. Peterson offers in her parlor. The idea took root in Eliza's mind, offering a vision of a future in Redemption Creek beyond her current work at the boarding house, a future where she could contribute meaningfully to the community and perhaps find fulfillment in work she loved. 10 days after the incident at the cabin, the town council was ready to vote on the mining ordinances. The meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock at the town hall, with the entire community invited to witness the proceedings. Quinn came to escort Eliza and rose to the meeting, his expression both determined and concerned. "Harlow's been gathering his supporters all day," he warned them as they walked. "He's making a last push to defeat the ordinances. Will he succeed?" Eliza asked, noting the unusual number of people on the streets, many of them minors she didn't recognize. "It will be close," Quinn admitted. "Some of the council members have been pressured by threats to their businesses or families." The town hall was packed when they arrived, with barely standing room available. Mayor Simmons called the meeting to order, looking nervous as he surveyed the crowd. "We're here to vote on Ordinance 37, regarding mining practices and water usage in Redemption Creek and the surrounding watershed," he announced, his voice barely audible over the murmuring crowd. The ordinance was read aloud, its provisions clear and straightforward: limitations on certain chemicals, requirements for containment of waste, restrictions on damming or diverting natural waterways without approval from affected landowners. When the reading concluded, the mayor called for final statements from both sides before the council vote. Quinn spoke eloquently about the need to protect the watershed for future generations, his passion evident in every word. Harlow countered with warnings about economic hardship and lost jobs if the excessive restrictions were imposed. The council members looked tense as they prepared to vote. Each would state their position aloud, with a simple majority needed to pass the ordinance. The first vote was against, from a council member whose store depended heavily on business from the miners. The second and third votes were in favor, from ranchers who understood the importance of clean water for their livestock. The fourth vote was against, from a saloon owner who feared losing mining customers. The fifth vote was in favor, from the town doctor who had seen respiratory ailments increase among miners exposed to certain chemicals. With the vote tied at 3-3, all eyes turned to the final council member, Henry Wilson. He cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable as he stood. "I've given this considerable thought," he began. "My business serves everyone in this community: miners, ranchers, townspeople. I've heard compelling arguments from both sides." Eliza held her breath, aware of Quinn's tension beside her. "But in the end, I have to consider the long-term welfare of Redemption Creek," Henry continued. "A town without clean water has no future, regardless of temporary prosperity. My vote is in favor of the ordinance." A cheer erupted from one side of the hall, while angry shouts came from the other. Mayor Simmons banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "Ordinance 37 is passed by a vote of 4-3, he declared when the noise finally subsided. "It will take effect in 30 days, giving operations time to adapt to the new requirements." Harlow stood suddenly, his face dark with rage. "This isn't over, Jameson," he called across the hall. "You'll regret this interference in my business." "The council has spoken, Harlow," Quinn replied evenly. "The law applies to everyone, even you." Harlow's gaze shifted to Eliza, his expression hardening further. "You've made powerful enemies, Miss Lambert, both of you have." With that, he stormed out, his men following close behind. The crowd dispersed slowly, with supporters congratulating Quinn and the council members who had voted for the ordinance. Eliza remained at Quinn's side, aware that while they had won an important victory, they had also made Harlow more dangerous. What will he do now? She asked Quinn as they left the hall. "He has two choices," Quinn replied. "Adapt his operations to comply with the new regulations or leave. Knowing Harlow, he won't go quietly." "You think he'll retaliate?" Quinn nodded grimly. "Almost certainly. We need to be careful, especially for the next few weeks. Stay close to town, don't go anywhere alone. The warning was unnecessary. Eliza had no intention of making herself vulnerable to Harlow's vengeance, but she appreciated Quinn's concern. "What about you?" she asked. "Your ranch is isolated. If he decides to target you directly." "I've taken precautions," Quinn assured her. "Extra men on watch, horses saddled and ready in case of trouble. We're prepared." Despite his confidence, Eliza couldn't shake a sense of foreboding as they walked back to the boarding house. Something in Harlow's expression had suggested a man pushed beyond ordinary business rivalry to personal vendetta. Her fears proved well-founded the next morning when news reached town that a fire had broken out at Jameson Ranch during the night. 2 barns had burned to the ground, and only quick action by Quinn's men had prevented the flames from spreading to the house and other buildings. Eliza was helping with breakfast when Quinn arrived at the boarding house, his face grim beneath a layer of soot. "Quinn," she exclaimed, hurrying to his side. "Are you hurt?" "Just tired," he assured her. "We fought the fire all night." Rose immediately offered him coffee and breakfast, which he accepted gratefully. As he ate, he explained what had happened. "It was deliberate," he said, his voice hard. "Someone set fires at opposite ends of the property simultaneously. If Tom hadn't spotted the flames early, we might have lost everything." "Harlow," Eliza said, the name a curse on her lips. Quinn nodded. "Almost certainly, though proving it will be difficult. Sheriff Morgan is investigating, but Harlow will have an alibi," Eliza finished for him. "Perfect alibi," Quinn confirmed. "He was playing poker in the Silver Dollar until after midnight with multiple witnesses." "His men, then," Rose suggested, refilling Quinn's coffee. "Probably," Quinn agreed, "but they'll be careful too. Harlow's not stupid." Despite his calm demeanor, Eliza could see the strain in Quinn's eyes. "What can I do?" she asked softly. Quinn's expression softened as he looked at her. "You're already doing it. Just seeing you helps more than you know." His words warmed her heart, but she wished she could offer more tangible assistance. An idea occurred to her. "The town should know what's happening," she said thoughtfully. "If Harlow is willing to commit arson, who knows what else he might do?" "People need to be vigilant," Quinn considered her suggestion. "You're right. Mayor Simmons has called a meeting for this afternoon to discuss the fire and additional security measures. You should come, share your perspective." The meeting revealed a community deeply divided. Some, primarily those with ranching interests and many of the merchants, supported Quinn and condemned the arson as the criminal act it was. Others, mainly those with ties to the mining industry, suggested the fire might have been an accident, despite evidence to the contrary. Mayor Simmons looked increasingly distressed as the meeting progressed. "Folks, please," he finally interrupted. "This kind of division is exactly what someone who would commit such an act wants to see. We need to stand together as a community." "The mayor's right," Quinn agreed, standing to address the crowd. "This isn't about mining versus ranching anymore. It's about lawlessness versus order. If we allow intimidation and violence to determine our policies, we might as well not have laws at all." His words seemed to resonate, even with some who had opposed the ordinance. Sheriff Morgan announced increased patrols and asked for volunteers to help keep watch over the town. After the meeting, Quinn pulled Eliza aside. "I need to return to the ranch. There's still much to repair and we need to strengthen our defenses." Eliza nodded in understanding, though concern for his safety gnawed at her. "When will I see you again?" "I'm not sure," Quinn admitted. "It might be a few days. I'll send word when I can." He hesitated, then added, "Eliza, I want you to be especially careful. Harlow knows that you matter to me. He might see you as a way to get to me." The implications were clear. "I'll be careful," she promised. "Rose and I will stay close to town, and your men are still keeping watch on the boarding house." Quinn's relief was evident. He took her hands in his gaze intense. "When this is over, when Harlow is no longer a threat, there are things I want to say to you, important things." Eliza's heart quickened. "I'll look forward to hearing them." Quinn brushed a soft kiss across her knuckles before releasing her hands. "Stay safe," he murmured, then turned to leave. Eliza watched him go, a strange mixture of fear and hope churning within her. Quinn Jameson had become important to her in ways she had never anticipated when she first arrived in Redemption Creek. The thought of losing him now, to Harlow's vengeance or any other cause, was unbearable. 3 days passed with no word from Quinn. Eliza tried to focus on her work at the boarding house, but her thoughts constantly strayed to the ranch and the man who had come to mean so much to her. The only news came through travelers passing through town, who reported that Jameson Ranch was buttoned up tight as a fortress, with armed men patrolling the perimeter. On the 4th day, as Eliza was sweeping the boarding house porch, she noticed unusual activity at the Silver Dollar Saloon. Men were loading supplies into wagons, food, tools, and what appeared to be mining equipment. Martha Wilson, passing by on her way to the general store, stopped to watch with Eliza. "Looks like Harlow's men are packing up," she observed. "Leaving town?" Eliza asked, hope rising within her. Martha shrugged. "Hard to say. Might just be moving operations to another site. Henry heard rumors that Harlow found silver on a new claim north of here." The news was both promising and concerning. If Harlow was focusing on a new claim, perhaps his vendetta against Quinn would fade. But if he was still in the area, the threat remained. That afternoon, a rider from Jameson Ranch arrived with a note for Eliza. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "Eliza, things are calmer here. The repairs are progressing well. I'll come to town tomorrow if all remains quiet." "I've missed you, Quinn." The simple words filled her with joy and relief. She penned a quick reply which the ranch hand promised to deliver on his return. That evening, as Eliza was helping Rose prepare dinner, the boarding house door burst open. Sheriff Morgan stood there, his expression grave. "Miss Lambert, Mrs. Wilson," he acknowledged them with a nod. "I need to speak with you urgently." "What's happened?" Eliza asked, her heart suddenly racing with dread. "Harlow's men have been spotted moving north, heavily armed," the sheriff explained. "Word is they're planning to dam the creek upstream from Jameson Ranch in violation of the new ordinance." "But why?" Rose asked, bewildered. "If they're moving operations elsewhere, vengeance," Eliza said softly, understanding immediately. "He wants to hurt Quinn one last time before he leaves." Sheriff Morgan nodded grimly. "That's my assessment as well. I've sent a rider to warn Jameson, but I wanted you to know, Miss Lambert, it might be wise for you to stay indoors until this is resolved." "What will Quinn do?" Eliza asked, fear clutching at her heart. "Defend his water rights, I expect," the sheriff replied. "I'm gathering a posse to ride out there, try to prevent bloodshed if possible." "I'm coming with you," Eliza declared, already reaching for her shawl. Sheriff Morgan's eyebrows shot up. "That wouldn't be wise, Miss Lambert." "If there's trouble, all the more reason for me to be there," Eliza insisted. "Harlow respects nothing and no one, but my presence might at least give Quinn pause before he does something rash." Rose looked alarmed. "Eliza, please reconsider. It's too dangerous." "More dangerous for everyone if I'm not there," Eliza countered, her mind made up. "Sheriff, I'll be ready to ride in 10 minutes. To her surprise, the sheriff didn't argue further. Perhaps he recognized the determination in her eyes, or perhaps he secretly agreed that her presence might help diffuse the situation. Less than an hour later, Eliza found herself riding with the sheriff and 5 deputies toward Jameson Ranch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape as they followed the creek upstream. They heard the confrontation before they saw its raised voices echoing down the creek bed. Rounding a bend, they came upon a standoff. Quinn and several of his ranch hands faced Harlow and at least a dozen miners. Between the groups was a partially constructed dam of logs and earth that already impeded the creek's flow. "Harlow," Sheriff Morgan called as they approached, "step away from that dam. You're in violation of town ordinance and trespassing on watershed land." Harlow turned, his expression darkening further when he spotted Eliza among the sheriff's group. "This is none of your concern, Sheriff. The ordinance doesn't take effect for another 3 weeks." "The trespassing laws are already in effect," Quinn countered, his voice hard. "This land is part of my property, recorded in the county deed books." Harlow laughed without humor. "Your property ends 50 yards downstream, Jameson. I checked the records myself." "Then you read them wrong," Quinn replied. "Sheriff, I filed an amended deed last year when I purchased the Miller claim. This section of the creek is included." Sheriff Morgan nodded. "He's right, Harlow. I witnessed the filing myself." Tension crackled in the air as Harlow absorbed this information. His men shifted restlessly, hands hovering near weapons. Eliza urged her horse forward slightly, drawing Harlow's attention. "Mr. Harlow, surely there's no need for this confrontation. If you're moving your operations elsewhere, as rumors suggest, why risk legal repercussions here?" Harlow's gaze fixed on her with cold intensity. "You cost me a fortune with your interference, Miss Lambert. You and your rancher turned the town against me, forced changes to my operation that will reduce profits substantially." "The ordinance protects the community's future," Eliza replied steadily, "including the future of your miners and their families." "My concern is profit, not sentiment," Harlow snapped. Then his expression shifted to something calculating. "Though perhaps there's still a way to resolve this situation beneficially for all parties." "What do you mean?" Quinn asked suspiciously. Harlow smiled thinly. "A simple exchange. We leave the creek undammed, end our quarrel here and now. In return, Miss Lambert agrees to leave Redemption Creek permanently." Shock rippled through Eliza at the audacity of his proposal. Before she could respond, Quinn spoke, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Miss Lambert is not a bargaining chip, Harlow. She's a respected member of this community with every right to remain here." "Is she worth bloodshed, Jameson?" Harlow pressed. "Because that's where this is headed otherwise. My men outnumber yours." "Not anymore," Sheriff Morgan interjected, gesturing to his deputies who had spread out in strategic positions. "And unlike your miners, my men are experienced with firearms and have the law on their side." Harlow's confidence faltered visibly as he reassessed the situation. His gaze darted from the sheriff to Quinn to Eliza, calculation clear in his eyes. "Mr. Harlow," Eliza said clearly, guiding her horse closer until she was directly facing him. "I came to Redemption Creek to build a new life free from intimidation and fear. I will not be driven away by more of the same." Her words seemed to hang in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Harlow laughed abruptly, the sound harsh in the tension-filled silence. "Well played, Miss Lambert. It seems I underestimated you from the beginning." He turned to his men. "Pack up. We're leaving." Confused murmurs rose from the miners, but Harlow silenced them with a sharp gesture. "The silver at the North Claim is richer anyway. Redemption Creek can keep its precious water pure." Relief washed through Eliza, though she remained wary of Harlow's sudden capitulation. Quinn moved his horse beside hers, his presence reassuring. "You'll dismantle this dam before you go," Sheriff Morgan instructed Harlow, his tone brooking no argument. Harlow's mouth tightened, but he nodded curtly. "You heard the sheriff," he called to his men. "Take it apart." As the miners began removing the logs and earth from the creek bed, Quinn leaned closer to Eliza. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "It was too dangerous." "I couldn't stay away, not knowing you were facing Harlow," she replied. "Besides, it seems my presence helped diffuse the situation." Quinn's expression softened, his eyes warm as they met hers. "You're a remarkable woman, Eliza Lambert." The work of dismantling the dam took over an hour. Sheriff Morgan insisted on supervising personally, making sure the creek's flow was fully restored before allowing Harlow and his men to depart. "I'll have deputies watch them until they're well beyond the county line," the sheriff assured Quinn. "I don't think they'll be back, but it pays to be cautious." As the sheriff and his men escorted Harlow's group away, Quinn turned to Eliza. "Will you come back to the ranch? It's getting late, and the ride to town would be long and dark." The invitation was practical rather than presumptuous, but Eliza still hesitated. "Would it be proper? People might talk." Quinn smiled slightly. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Bridges, is a formidable chaperone. Your reputation will remain intact." With that assurance, Eliza agreed. They rode side by side in the gathering twilight, the tension of the confrontation gradually easing as they talked. "You think Harlow is truly gone for good?" she asked. Quinn considered the question. "From Redemption Creek, yes. His pride won't let him return after today." But Colorado is a big territory. We may cross paths with him again someday. I hope not, Eliza sighed, though I'm glad we stood firm against his intimidation. We make a good team, Quinn observed, his tone light but his eyes serious as they met hers. The simple statement carried implications that made Eliza's heart quicken. Yes, they did make a good team, she with her articulate conviction, he with his steady strength. Together, they had helped protect Redemption Creek's future. Jameson Ranch came into view as they crested a rise, a substantial main house of hewn logs. Several outbuildings, corrals, and beyond them, rolling pastures where horses grazed. Despite the recent fire damage to two of the barns, the property conveyed prosperity and permanence. "It's beautiful," Eliza said sincerely. Quinn's expression warmed with pride. "It's taken 8 years of hard work, but it's becoming what I envisioned." Mrs. Bridges, a stout woman with graying hair and a no-nonsense manner, welcomed them at the door. She clucked disapprovingly at Quinn's dusty appearance and Eliza's wind-blown hair but efficiently organized hot water for washing, a spare room for Eliza, and a hearty meal for them both. Over dinner in the comfortable dining room, Quinn told Eliza more about his plans for the ranch, the bloodlines he was developing in his horses, the improvements to irrigation that would expand his grazing land, the orchards he hoped to establish on the sheltered southern slope. "You're building for generations," Eliza observed, touched by his vision. "That's my hope," Quinn agreed, though it would be a lonely legacy without someone to share it with. The implication hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging it directly but both aware of its presence. After dinner, they moved to the parlor, a comfortable room with bookshelves lining one wall and a large stone fireplace dominating another. Mrs. Bridges brought coffee, then pointedly left the door open as she retired to the kitchen. Quinn smiled at the older woman's transparent chaperoning. "Mrs. Bridges has been with me since I first bought the ranch," he explained to Eliza. "She came as a cook and has somehow become the manager of my household and at times my life. She clearly cares about you," Eliza observed. "Like the son she never had, she tells me," Quinn replied with affection. "Though she's not shy about expressing disapproval when she feels it's warranted." "And does she approve of me?" Eliza asked, surprising herself with the boldness of the question. Quinn's gaze turned serious. "Very much so. Though she's worried I'll frighten you away with too much attention before I've properly courted you." Eliza's heart fluttered at the word courted. "Is that what you're doing, courting me?" "I'd like to be," Quinn admitted, moving to sit beside her on the sofa. "If you're amenable." The formal phrasing made Eliza smile despite her nervousness. "I think I would be amenable," she replied softly. Quinn's expression brightened with hope. "Eliza, when I saw you confronting Harlow today, I realized something. I don't just admire your courage and intelligence, though I do greatly. I've fallen in love with you." The declaration, so simple and direct, took her breath away. "Quinn, you don't need to respond in kind," he assured her quickly. "I know it's soon, and you came here seeking independence, not attachment. I respect that completely. I'm willing to court you properly, for as long as it takes." Eliza studied his earnest face, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. This man, who had stopped her father's hand from striking her, who had respected her opinions and supported her voice in community matters, who had built a life of meaning and purpose in this wild land, this man loved her. And she loved him, she realized with sudden clarity. Not because he had protected her, but because he had seen her strength even when she doubted it herself, because he treated her as an equal partner, not a possession or a burden. "Quinn," she said softly, reaching for his hand. "I came to Redemption Creek looking for safety and independence. I found those things, but I found something else too, something I wasn't looking for but now can't imagine being without." Hope blazed in his eyes. "What's that?" "You," Eliza answered simply. "I love you too." The joy that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Quinn lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss to her palm. "Eliza Lambert, you have made me the happiest man in Colorado territory." From the kitchen doorway came a discreet cough. Mrs. Bridges stood there, pretending great interest in adjusting a vase of wildflowers. Would you care for more coffee, Mr. Jameson? Miss Lambert, Quinn laughed, his eyes never leaving Eliza's face. No thank you, Mrs. Bridges, but perhaps you could join us for a moment. I have news I think you'll approve of. The housekeeper approached, her attempt at a stern expression belied by the hopeful lift of her eyebrows. News, sir? Miss Lambert has agreed to let me court her, Quinn announced, his voice warm with happiness. Mrs. Bridges didn't bother hiding her pleased smile. Well, it's about time. Congratulations, Miss Lambert. You've chosen well, if I may say so. I believe I have, Eliza agreed, returning the older woman's smile. The next morning, Quinn escorted Eliza back to town, where Rose received the news of their courtship with delighted approval. In the weeks that followed, Quinn called on Eliza regularly. They attended church together, went on rides through the countryside, always properly chaperoned, and spent evenings talking in the boarding house parlor while Rose pretended to be absorbed in her sewing nearby. True to Sheriff Morgan's prediction, Victor Harlow did not return to Redemption Creek. News eventually reached them that he had established new mining operations near Silverton, far enough away that his influence no longer threatened their community. With the danger past, life in Redemption Creek settled into a pleasant rhythm. Quinn's ranch recovered from the fire damage, the mining ordinances were successfully implemented, and the town continued to grow and prosper. Eliza, encouraged by Quinn and Rose, approached the town council about establishing a proper school. To her delight, the proposal was enthusiastically received. By spring, construction had begun on a small schoolhouse, with Eliza appointed as the town's first official teacher. As summer approached, Quinn invited Eliza to dinner at his ranch, suggesting she might like to see the new foals born that season. Rose, who was supposed to accompany them as chaperone, developed a convenient headache at the last minute, insisting that Mrs. Bridges would serve as adequate supervision. The evening was perfect, the sunset painting the mountains in gold and crimson, the air fragrant with pine and wildflowers. After dinner, Quinn suggested a walk to see his favorite spot on the property. Mrs. Bridges handed Eliza a shawl with a knowing smile that made her suspect something was planned. Quinn led her to a gentle rise overlooking the creek, where a massive old oak tree spread its branches. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, he turned to face her. Eliza, he began, his voice slightly unsteady with emotion, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, seeing your strength and compassion, your intelligence and determination, I fall more in love with you each day. He took her hands in his eyes earnest in the fading light. I know you came to Redemption Creek seeking independence, and I would never want to take that from you. But I hope you might consider a partnership instead, one built on mutual respect and love. Dropping to one knee, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Eliza Lambert, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Tears of happiness filled Eliza's eyes as Quinn opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small diamond flanked by sapphires. Yes, she whispered, then more firmly, yes, Quinn, I would be honored to be your wife. Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms. His kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. I was afraid you might think it too soon, he admitted when they finally parted. Eliza shook her head, her hand resting against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. When you know, she said simply, and I know that I want to spend my life with you. They were married in the Redemption Creek Church on a perfect September day, with wildflowers decorating the altar and sunlight streaming through the windows. Rose stood as Eliza's attendant, beaming with happiness for her cousin. The entire town turned out for the celebration, which continued well into the evening with dancing, feasting, and heartfelt wishes for the couple. Later, as Quinn drove the buggy toward their home now, Eliza leaned against his shoulder, contentment filling her heart. Happy, Mrs. Jameson? Quinn asked softly, his arm tightening around her. Completely, Eliza replied, turning her face up for his kiss. As they approached the ranch, now lit with welcoming lanterns, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had fled Philadelphia in fear and desperation, seeking only safety and independence. Instead, she had found a community, purpose in her teaching, and a love she had never dared to dream possible. The moment when Quinn had caught her father's hand, declaring "never again," had been the beginning of her new life, not because he had protected her, though she valued that, but because in that moment, someone had finally seen her worth and stood beside her rather than over her. Now, as Quinn lifted her from the buggy to carry her across the threshold of their home, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety, but happiness beyond measure in the arms of this good, honorable man who loved her strength as much as her softness. "Welcome home, my love," Quinn murmured against her hair as he set her down in the entryway that Mrs. Bridges had decorated with fresh flowers and candles for their return. "Home," Eliza echoed, her heart full. "Yes, this is truly home now." And in the years that followed through the birth of their children, the growth of the ranch, the development of Redemption Creek into a thriving town with Eliza's school at its heart, that sense of home only deepened and strengthened, built on the foundation of love and respect they had established from the beginning. When their daughter asked, many years later, how they had fallen in love, Eliza would smile at Quinn, the silver now threading his dark hair, and say, "It began with a promise never again and grew into forever."